Ever scroll through social media and just feel like, ugh, my brain is melting from all the bad arguments?
Oh, tell me about it.
It's like everyone's shouting and no one's listening, and logic has totally left the building.
Yeah.
Well, you're not alone.
Yep.
Today, we are diving into why so many online debates seem to go off the rails.
Okay.
We actually found this Reddit post, and it captures this frustration so perfectly.
Really?
Yeah. The user asked, why aren't logical fallacies taught more in schools?
Hmm.
And the comments section,
What was it like?
pure gold.
Okay.
So some people pointed out that a lot of adults can't even recognize manipulation, let alone kids. And others were arguing that teaching critical thinking could help younger generations break free from these rigid mindsets.
Okay.
And then there was this one cynical comment
Yeah.
suggesting that maybe the powers that be actually want us to be easily manipulated.
Interesting.
So to help us unpack all of this,
Sure.
we have an expert in rhetoric and communication joining us today.
Happy to be here.
I'm so glad you're here.
Thanks for having me.
So it's true. This frustration with online discourse is something we hear about a lot.
Yeah, for sure.
And that Reddit thread really highlights this question.
Yeah.
Are we actually equipped to navigate this sea of information and opinions and, like, let's be honest, sometimes it's straight up BS that we're encountering every single day.
Yeah. It's a lot.
It is.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's just start with the basics. What exactly are logical fallacies,
Okay.
and why do they matter so much in online discussions?
Okay. So a logical fallacy is basically a crack in the foundation of your argument.
Hmm.
It's a flaw in reasoning that makes the argument crumble, even if the conclusion sounds really convincing on the surface.
Oh, okay.
So think of it this way. You're building a house of cards,
Okay.
right? Each card represents a piece of logic. But if you try to sneak in a joker,
Uh-huh.
the whole structure is going to become unstable.
Right.
And that joker, that's your logical fallacy.
So it's not just about disagreeing with someone's opinion.
Right.
It's about recognizing when their argument is built on shaky ground.
Exactly.
Got it.
Yeah.
And so how many of these fallacies are lurking out there?
Oh, there are tons.
Really?
Just waiting to trip us up.
Okay.
One of the
Okay.
most common ones is the ad hominem attack.
Okay.
Instead of addressing the argument, someone attacks the person making it.
Ooh, I see this all the time.
Right.
Someone criticizes a policy and boom,
Yeah.
someone else jumps in with personal insults instead of actually engaging with the critique.
Yeah, it's a total distraction tactic.
It is. It derails the conversation.
Exactly. Another common one is the slippery slope fallacy.
Okay.
So someone claims that one action will inevitably lead to this chain of disastrous consequences.
Oh, okay.
Even if there's no real evidence to support that chain of events.
Right.
It's all about fear-mongering and exaggeration.
So, like, saying, if we ban plastic straws, next thing you know, the government's going to be controlling what we eat and drink.
Yeah,
A
exactly.
bit dramatic.
Right, totally. It's about recognizing those leaps in logic that aren't grounded in reality.
Okay, so going back to that Reddit post, the big question was, are schools failing us by not teaching these critical thinking skills? I mean, I don't remember ever having a class dedicated to spotting logical fallacies.
It's a mixed bag.
Is it?
Yeah, curriculums vary so widely.
Yeah.
Some schools might have debate clubs or philosophy electives,
Right,
but those aren't always mandatory.
right.
And even when logical fallacies are taught, it's often in a very theoretical way.
Okay.
Students might memorize definitions, but they don't necessarily know how to apply that knowledge in the real world.
So they know the name of the fallacy,
Yeah,
but they can't spot it in the wild, like in a political speech.
right.
Or that viral Facebook post everyone's sharing.
Exactly. That's a key point here. Learning about these fallacies isn't about becoming an argument-winning machine. It's about becoming a more discerning consumer of information, period.
Okay.
Think of it like this. You wouldn't buy a used car without checking under the hood, right? You'd want to make sure the engine's in good shape, that there are no hidden problems.
Yeah.
Same goes for information. We need to look beyond that shiny surface and check the underlying logic.
So we're talking about media literacy here.
Exactly.
That ability to analyze sources,
Yes.
spot bias,
Uh-huh.
and recognize when someone's trying to manipulate us.
That's it. And this goes beyond just words.
Does it?
Oh, yeah. Think about how easily charts and graphs can be manipulated to mislead people.
Oh, yeah.
You see a dramatic spike, and your brain goes, whoa, something big is happening.
Right.
But if you don't pay attention to the scales or the context, You might be totally misinterpreting the data.
Oh, I've totally fallen for that before.
Right.
A graph makes some bold claim, but then you look closer, and it turns out they've cherry-picked the data or manipulated the axis to tell a specific story. It's frustrating.
It is. That's why understanding the tactics of persuasion, both logical and visual, is so crucial in today's world.
Yeah.
But here's where it gets even more interesting. One commenter on that Reddit thread made a point that really resonated with me. They said, communication is inherently emotional. So is striving for purely logical debate even realistic?
That's such a good point. I mean, we're not robots.
Right.
Even if we understand the fallacies intellectually, our own emotions and biases can still cloud our judgment, right?
Absolutely. We have this ideal of the perfectly rational Spock-like mind, but we're all human. We're wired to respond to emotional appeals, especially when they tap into our existing beliefs or fears. Think about those heart-wrenching ads with sad puppies.
Oh, yeah.
They're designed to tug at your heartstrings.
They are.
And make you donate, even if you haven't really researched the organization.
Okay, so if simply knowing about fallacies isn't enough, and emotions are always in the mix, how do we even begin to navigate this complex landscape of online discourse?
Right.
It feels like we need a whole new set of tools.
You're telling me it's not enough to just know about these fallacies. We need practical strategies.
Right.
Tools we can actually use in the heat of the moment. When we're scrolling through our feeds and we come across that post, that makes our blood pressure spike.
Exactly. Like, my brain knows what an ad hominem attack is, but then someone online calls me a moron for liking pineapple on pizza.
Oh, no.
And all that logic goes out the window.
Yeah, I get that. It's the tricky thing about online discourse.
Yeah.
It's so fast-paced.
It is.
And it's so emotionally charged.
Yes.
But one of the most powerful tools we have is surprisingly simple.
Really? What is it?
Slowing down.
Wait, seriously?
Seriously.
Just taking a breath.
Taking a breath. We're so bombarded with information that we're almost trained to react instantly.
That's true.
Share, comment, argue, repeat.
Yeah.
But if you pause before hitting that share button, before firing back that snarky response, you create space for critical thinking to kick in.
Okay. So instead of getting swept up in the emotional current, I can take a moment to ask, okay, what's really being said here? What assumptions are being made? Is this even worth engaging with?
Exactly. You're already starting to think more critically.
Okay.
And once you've slowed down, you can start asking those key questions. Like, what's the source of this information?
Okay.
Is this a reputable news outlet? A peer-reviewed study?
Right.
Or some random blog post with a catchy headline?
Right. And even if the source seems credible, is there any evidence to back up their claims?
That's a great point.
Or is it just a string of assertions and appeals to emotion?
Yeah, you got to look for that evidence.
So it's like being a detective.
Yeah.
Instead of just accepting the story at face value.
Right.
I'm looking for clues, checking for inconsistencies.
Yes.
Doing a bit of background research.
You got it. Don't be afraid to get your hands dirty and dig a little deeper.
Okay.
If someone throws out a statistic that seems too bad to be true, take a few minutes to see if it holds up.
How do I do that?
You can do a quick Google search.
Okay.
Check fact-checking websites like Snopes or PolitiFact. You'd be amazed at how much misinformation gets passed around just because people don't bother to verify.
That's so true. We get caught up in the outrage or excitement of a trending topic.
Yeah.
But sometimes taking that extra step to check sources can completely change your perspective.
Absolutely. It can also save you from spreading falsehoods unknowingly.
Right.
Which is a win for everyone. Now, another strategy that's incredibly valuable, and this might sound counterintuitive, is to actively seek out diverse viewpoints.
Wait, so you're telling me I should intentionally read stuff that I disagree with?
I know.
That doesn't sound very fun.
It's human nature to gravitate towards information that confirms our existing beliefs.
Right.
It's comfortable.
Yeah.
It's validating. But it can also lead us down a dangerous path.
Oh, no.
Into echo chambers where we're only exposed to one side of the story.
You know, I've never thought about it that way. If I'm only hearing from people who agree with me, I might not even realize that I'm making assumptions or relying on faulty logic.
Yeah, it's easy to get stuck in that bubble.
It's like my critical thinking muscles are getting all flabby from lack of use.
Exactly. By exposing yourself to different perspectives, you're forcing yourself to flex those mental muscles.
Okay.
You're asking, okay, how does this argument hold up against a different set of facts or values? Where are the points of agreement? Where do we fundamentally differ and why?
So it's not about abandoning my own beliefs.
Right.
It's about testing them,
Exactly.
making sure they can stand up to scrutiny.
Yes.
And maybe, just maybe, learning something new in the process.
That's the heart of critical thinking. And here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
When you engage with opposing viewpoints, it doesn't have to be about winning.
Right.
Or trying to convert the other person to your side.
Ooh, that's a tough one. I'll admit, sometimes it feels like every online debate is a battle to be won, a fight for the last word.
I understand that feeling. It's easy to get caught up in the adversarial nature of online platforms.
Yeah.
But if your goal is to actually learn something, to deepen your understanding, then you need to approach these conversations with a different mindset.
Like what?
One of curiosity and openness.
So instead of going into attack mode,
Uh-huh.
I should be listening for what I can learn,
Yes.
even if I ultimately disagree with the other person's conclusions. Is that what you're saying?
It's about looking for those nuggets of truth or insight that might challenge your own perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they have a point you hadn't considered before.
Okay.
Maybe they highlight a piece of evidence you were unaware of.
And who knows? Maybe in the process, I can help someone else see things a little differently too. Not by bashing them over the head with my own opinions.
Right.
But by engaging in a genuine exchange of ideas.
That's the ideal. But even if you don't change anyone's mind, you're still expanding your own understanding of the world and the complexities of the issues we face,
Right.
which ultimately makes you a more informed and effective citizen.
Okay. This is all starting to make more sense.
Good.
But I have a confession.
What's that?
Even when I try to be rational and open-minded,
Yeah.
sometimes I get totally sucked into the drama of an online argument.
Oh, I know that feeling.
I get defensive.
Yeah.
I get emotional.
It happens to the best of us.
All that good advice about slowing down goes out the window.
That's completely normal. Remember what we said earlier about communication being inherently emotional?
Mm-hmm.
We're not Vulcans.
Right.
We have feelings.
Yeah.
And those feelings are going to show up, especially when we're discussing topics we care deeply about.
Right. So how do I avoid letting my emotions completely hijack the conversation? It feels like there's this constant tension between logic and emotion that I can't quite resolve.
Yeah.
Do I just have to suppress my feelings and turn into a robot?
Not at all. We often think of logic and emotion as being opposed to each other,
Yeah.
but they don't have to be. In fact, emotions can be incredibly valuable sources of information.
Wait, how so?
Think about it. If you're reading something that makes you angry,
Okay.
that anger might be a signal that something is wrong, that your values are being challenged. Or if you're reading something that makes you feel hopeful, that hope might be a sign that you're connecting with something positive and meaningful.
So instead of trying to ignore or suppress my emotions,
Yeah,
I should be paying attention to what they're telling me.
exactly.
Like data points, signals from my inner compass.
I love that analogy because that's really what it's about. Integrating our emotions and our logic to make the most informed and ethical choices possible.
Okay.
It's not about logic versus emotion. It's about logic and emotion working together.
Okay, so practically speaking, what does this look like in the heat of the moment?
Right.
Say I'm reading a comment that just makes my blood boil.
Yeah.
What steps can I take to avoid getting swept up in that emotional wave
Okay.
and typing a response I might regret later?
Here are a few strategies that might help.
Okay.
First, take a moment to identify the emotion you're feeling. Literally name it. Okay, I'm feeling angry right now. Why?
That sounds so simple, but I can see how it would force me to pause and reflect instead of just reacting impulsively.
Right.
It's like hitting the pause button on my emotional autopilot.
Exactly. And then once you've named the emotion,
Okay.
ask yourself, what about this comment is triggering this reaction in me? Is it attacking something I deeply care about?
Okay.
Is it presenting information that challenges my worldview?
Right.
Is it just plain rude and disrespectful?
And once I understand the root of the emotion, I can start to assess whether my reaction is justified
Yes.
or if it's just my emotional bias is taking over.
That's a key step because sometimes our emotional reactions are completely valid.
Okay.
We should be angry about injustice.
Right.
We should be fearful of threats to our safety. The challenge is figuring out if those emotions are based on solid evidence.
Right.
Or if we're letting our fears and biases warp our perception.
It's like that saying, don't believe everything you think. Just because I'm feeling something strongly doesn't automatically make it true or accurate.
Exactly. And that's where the critical thinking skills we've been discussing come into play.
Okay.
You can ask yourself, okay, I'm feeling angry, but is this anger based on verifiable facts and evidence? Or is it based on assumptions, generalizations, or maybe even my own insecurities?
This is all starting to feel like a much more nuanced approach to online discourse.
Yeah.
It's not just about logic or emotion.
Right.
It's about finding a way to make them work together.
Exactly.
To use my head and de my heart.
And that's where the real power lies. Because when you can integrate your heart and your mind, you become a much more compassionate and effective communicator.
And hopefully you can help create a more productive and less toxic online environment.
Yes.
One where people feel safe to share their ideas without being attacked or ridiculed.
Exactly. It might seem idealistic,
Yeah.
but even small changes in our own behavior can have a ripple effect.
I love that idea. It's not about single-handedly fixing the internet.
Right.
It's about contributing to a better online culture.
Yeah.
One thoughtful comment at a time.
I like that. But this all raises another question for me.
So we've been talking about how to be more savvy consumers of information.
Right.
But what about the people who are actually creating that information?
Oh, yeah.
Like, sometimes it feels like certain media outlets or social media influencers are deliberately using these fallacies and these emotional triggers to manipulate people.
It's a valid concern.
Is it?
Yeah, and unfortunately, it's not always a matter of simple ignorance.
Okay.
Some individuals and organizations do exploit logical fallacies and emotional appeals and even outright falsehoods to achieve their own ends.
So it's like a whole other level of complexity here.
Yeah.
We're not just battling bad arguments.
Right.
We're battling against deliberate manipulation.
That's why media literacy is so crucial. It's about understanding the motivations and tactics of those who create and disseminate information.
Right.
It's about asking who benefits from this message. What are they trying to achieve?
So it's not just about analyzing the message itself.
Right.
It's about analyzing the messenger too.
Exactly.
Are they trustworthy? Do they have a hidden agenda? Are they trying to sell me something?
Right.
Or are they genuinely trying to inform me?
Those are the key questions. And that's where things can get really tricky.
How so?
Because there's a whole spectrum of intentionality here. You have some folks who are genuinely misinformed.
Right.
Or who are unknowingly spreading falsehoods.
Like that well-meaning relative who shares an article without realizing it's from a satire site.
Exactly. But then you have those who are intentionally distorting facts.
Right.
Or using emotional manipulation to achieve their goals, whether those goals are political or financial or even just about gaining followers and clicks.
Okay, so how do we differentiate between honest mistakes and deliberate manipulation? I mean, sometimes it feels like everyone has an agenda these days.
It's not always easy.
It's not.
But there are some red flags to watch out for.
Okay, like what?
One is a consistent pattern of biased or misleading information.
Okay.
If a source repeatedly presents a distorted view of reality, it's a sign that they might not be trustworthy.
So it's not just about one slip-up.
Right.
It's about a track record of questionable claims.
Exactly.
If they're constantly bending the truth or cherry-picking data to fit their narrative, that's a pretty good indicator that something fishy is going on.
It is. Another red flag is the use of emotionally charged language or imagery that's clearly designed to provoke a strong reaction rather than encouraging critical thinking.
Like using inflammatory language.
Yes.
Or fear-mongering tactics to bypass our logic circuits and trigger our emotional responses.
Precisely. And it's also important to be aware of the broader context in which information is presented.
What do you mean?
Like, who's funding the research?
Okay.
What are their biases? Who stands to gain from the dissemination of this information?
So it's like peeling back the layers of an onion.
Yeah.
We're not just looking at the surface message.
Right.
We're trying to understand the underlying motivations and power dynamics at play.
That's a great way to put it, because ultimately, media literacy is about empowering ourselves to be critical thinkers.
Okay.
To be active participants in the information landscape.
Right.
Rather than passive consumers just absorbing whatever's thrown at us.
This has been an incredible deep dive.
It has.
But I have to ask, where do we go from here? I mean, this all feels pretty daunting.
Yeah.
It's like we're surrounded by misinformation and manipulation.
It's true.
How do we even begin to fight back?
It's a significant challenge. But I'm actually optimistic.
Are you?
Yeah, Because the more we talk about these issues, the more we raise awareness of logical fallacies, media bias,
Right.
and the tactics of manipulation.
Yeah.
The more we empower people to be critical thinkers.
So it's like we're building a collective immune system against misinformation. The more people are exposed to these ideas, the less susceptible they'll be to these tactics.
I love that analogy because it's true. Knowledge is power. And the more we equip ourselves and our communities with these critical thinking tools, the better prepared we'll be to navigate this complex and ever-evolving information landscape.
And hopefully, to create a more informed, rational, and compassionate online world.
Yes.
One where genuine dialogue and respectful debate can flourish.
That's the dream, isn't it?
It is.
And I truly believe it's a dream worth fighting for.
Well said. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. It's been an eye-opening conversation.
It's been my pleasure.
And to our listeners, remember, critical thinking is a journey, not a destination.
That's right.
So keep questioning, keep learning, and keep striving to be informed and engaged citizens.
Yes, absolutely.
And if you enjoyed this deep dive into the wild world of online discourse, be sure to subscribe to Voices of the Soul so you don't miss future episodes.
Do it.
We'll be exploring all sorts of fascinating topics, from the science of happiness to the mysteries of the universe.
I can't wait.
And for even more thought-provoking content.
Yes.
Don't forget to check out Shauna Plage's YouTube channel.
Such good stuff.
She's got a knack for breaking down complex ideas in a way that's both informative and entertaining.
It's true.
Until next time, keep those minds sharp and those hearts open.
We'll do the same.
We'll see you in the next deep dive.
Bye, everyone.